The only human left in the planet finally dies at the hands of a dragon, but little did he know that he would travel back in time to become the only one who can save the world. His name is Kim Sung-in. He knows he doesn't have any time to kill. He quickly jumps down using a mana dash to face the monsters that have begun to gather in the area. He's quickly able to chop them into pieces with his powerful spinning attacks. But before he can finish defeating them all, a giant purple dragon appears. Smoke billows out of its mouth, and it towers over the nearby buildings. The dragon's name is Fafnir. While Fafnir acknowledges that Sung-in is powerful, he decides to end the hero's quest and take his strength for himself. Fafnir growls and speaks one last time to Sung-in.
After I bring you down, I will make that strength mine.
While Sung-in attempts to strike back first, Fafnir is quickly able to use a magical attack to slam Sung-in into the ground, before slamming one of his massive fists to crush Sung-in. His last thought is wondering whether it was truly the end, if he truly failed to save the world. Sung-in wakes up again as if it's another bad dream. A bunch of guys are gathered around him, calling him a different name, Kim Soo-hyun. Soo-hyun, previously known as Sung-in, sits up. He's confused about where he is, and the other guys laugh at how confused he is. But quickly, they get back to business. They were going to beat Soo-hyun up. You'd think they'd quit when he fainted, but they waited for him to get back up just to beat him up again? Did he do something really bad? It's so weird. One of the bullies raises his arms to punch Soo-hyun, and Soo-hyun punches him first, causing him to slide across the concrete. The other guys are shocked, and after noticing the police arrived, they run away. The bully tells Soo-hyun he better come to school tomorrow, but he just ignores it and tiredly gets up, his body aching. He finds a phone and laughs that it seems ancient. I guess even though they had a world-ending apocalypse, they just had really great phones. But when he sees his reflection on the screen, he doesn't recognize himself. In 2042, the world was destroyed with Soo-hyun's defeat. Years before, dungeons appeared all around the world in a terrible incident known as the Outbreak. As monsters poured out and massacred cities, people were unable to fight back. Then, people with magical powers began to appear. They were dubbed Awakeners, and they fought to protect humanity from the monsters. Before long, Soo-hyun awakened too. He fought to protect humanity until the very end, when the dragon Fafnir killed him. And today, he doesn't know his name, birthday, or address, even as the police officer that found him questions him. It happens to everyone, Soo-hyun. While he isn't sure what to think of the world he woke up in, he's sure that it's real. He notices that it's 2022, around 2 decades before his death. The officer finishes his questioning and tells Soo-hyun to stay safe, noting that his mother will be there soon. When his mother arrives, she immediately comforts him, but is confused that he forgot his address and is behaving more formally than usual. Soo-hyun, meanwhile, is confused about what to think about the mother of the body he now inhabits, feeling like the life isn't his own. It must be especially odd for him to have such a nice mom now, considering how harsh his past mom was to him during his nightmare. As they walk through an empty park, she tells him that she'll protect him from the bullies, and tells him to tell her the next time it happens. Before Soo-hyun can react though, a wolf begins to charge at them from behind. As he turns to face it, he realizes that it's not just any typical wolf, but a werewolf monster. And since they're alone in the park, he'll need to defend both of them without his powers. He quickly goes to grab an umbrella from the trash, and misses a hit before bracing it against the werewolf's fangs to protect himself. As he struggles to hold the werewolf away from him, another one appears and lunges at him. While Soo-hyun can only watch helplessly, his mom springs into action and jumps at the wolf, shoving it out of the air and away from Soo-hyun. His mom and the werewolf crash onto the ground, and in a state of panic, Soo-hyun manages to throw the wolf off of him before running to his mother. She insists that he runs away and escapes, but Soo-hyun turns back towards the werewolves angrily to fend them off with the umbrella. Before he can strike, however, they disappear. Soo-hyun falls to the ground, exhausted. His body feels weak compared to the one he used to fight with. I guess that's not super unusual since he's now a high schooler, but it's gonna be really funny watching him try to train while he's super weak. After resting for a moment, he picks up his mom and prepares to bring her home before realizing he still doesn't know where their house is. That's kind of important, Soo-hyun. Luckily, he has the idea to look at his mom's wallet and find their address. And before long, he's able to lay his mom down on the couch and let the both of them get some rest. He wonders why she went so far to protect him. They haven't gone much into his background yet, but I really wonder if his last mom was just plain mean to him. So many protagonists are loners, so it could be so interesting if it showed that support and love can do something to make someone stronger. He tries to ruminate about things, but a game-like screen forms behind him and authorizes him as a user in the Tower of Trials. Immediately after, a gate to the tower opens up, and Soo-hyun realizes he's awakening. He's excited, especially since he's awakening in 2022, years before he did in the last world. As he knows from his previous life, the tower has floors in groups of 10. Each floor can also have a difficulty level from 1 to 10, with the rewards also proportionally increasing based on floor and level. Knowing that he'll need to be much stronger to defeat Fafnir and save the world, he decides to start the first floor at level 10. Hours later, he's still hacking away at werewolves with his trusty sword. I can't lie, if it were me having to fight wolves for hours, I think I would have just died. Meanwhile, dungeons have started to appear on the news. It's estimated that they've tripled in frequency since 2019, but strangely, dungeons are viewed as a generally good thing. Etherstones from the dungeons were used as an important source of energy, and while people didn't like outbreaks, the new Etherstone technology was just too beneficial. For that reason, Awakeners were well rewarded. Nobody realized that the outbreaks would accelerate and ultimately cause the end of the world in 2028 though. The Tower of Trials, also known as the Abyss, has levels with different environments. The second floor is like a village, and just awakened heroes reside in it. After completing the first floor, Soo-hyun is able to enter the village. All around him, people talk about the leaderboards, that a newcomer named Kim Soo-hyun cleared the first floor with 2,230 points, beating second place by over 1,000 points. He doesn't notice the rumors, but decides that he'll need to go and spend his 2,000 points to prepare for the next level. He had some stat and magic power increases from the last level, but he thinks he'll need a few extra skills to be able to beat the next floor on level 10. He starts by going to the skill merchant, Dark Elf Veli. She immediately tries to get him to buy on impulse, but he interrupts, saying he already knows what he wants. That's rough. 2,000 points is a lot of money to miss out on. Soo-hyun decides to buy a leap and transformation skill totaling 1,150. And she's in disbelief that he can actually pay for it. I guess she wasn't missing out on the money after all. It would have been kind of funny if she made him impulse buy like cheap stuff though. After buying the two skills, he also gets a sword, short spear, bandages, medicine, and provisions, and stores it all in his dimensional pouch. Taking stock of everything he bought, he decides to go ahead and activate his skills. He notices that with both of the skills, he can increase proficiency to make them more powerful, but the transformation skill also has levels that he can increase. He recalls that it's actually the only growth type skill offered in the Abyss, and that any other ones are hard to find. He also bought a gross tasting magic power catalyst potion to help him use the skills, since it'll increase his magic power, rank, and count. It's one of the best hidden gems in the Abyss, but tastes absolutely terrible. It kind of looks like grape soda, and if it tastes like that, I can't blame him. Grape flavored things suck, and they still make everything that flavor anyways. Just as he's about to drink the potion, a strange man approaches him. Soo-hyun is shocked since he couldn't detect his presence until he spoke. The man, Choi Hach-kun, laughs and says he didn't mean to scare him. And Soo-hyun has a terrifying vision as he realizes exactly who he is. In the previous world, Choi Hach-kun was a genius who later became twisted and annihilated a major guild. In that world, he had a dangerous look in his eye. In the new world, he looked strangely normal. Before he can keep reflecting on what happened, Hach-kun asks if something's wrong. It's kind of weird to stare at people, Soo-hyun. He changes the topic and asks why Hach-kun followed him, and he explains that he seemed to have a good idea of how to shop and fight. Soo-hyun tenses up, not sure if he's being threatened, but in full golden retriever fashion, Hach-kun asks to form a party. Because Hach-kun intends to do level 8 though, Soo-hyun decides to proceed on his own at level 10. He goes to the next floor. He finds himself hiding in a tropical forest. A tribe of lizard-like hunters known as the Sharl are tracking him, attempting to recover their treasure from him. His mission is to survive, but since they're such talented trackers, he has no idea how he's going to do that. But then, he has an idea. Soo-hyun jumps down from the tree and slashes at one of the Sharls, realizing that he can succeed by simply defeating every monster in the forest. Unfortunately, there are dozens of the Sharls already gathered around, and when they hear the commotion, more are going to gather. He keeps rapidly moving, dodging their attacks and slashing at them. Then, the boss appears. A giant armored Sharl riding a huge dinosaur-like monster. He rapidly jumps toward it, slashing the boss so hard that he split in two. It's a really cool scene, but kind of funny considering that just a few days ago, he was completely frail. I want to know what workout Soohyun is doing. For completing the dungeon, the Charles treasure activates, showing that it will give him 5 uses of recovering from all damage and status ailments. He's also able to use his transformation skill to get the Charles boss's trait, Berserker. It will let him become stronger when he's physically exhausted and wounded. Finally, realizing how hungry and exhausted he is, he decides to go home. When he arrives, he sees that his mom has made an enormous platter of food to thank him for saving her. He's shocked, wishing that she would have rested instead of making him food. He begins wolfing the food down though while his mom laughs kindly, saying that it isn't hard work to cook for her son. I really hope his mom stays as a part of the story. It's so wholesome. Later that night, he goes on his computer to read about the Abyss. As he looks online, he realizes that he's about to deal with a lot of trouble for how well he's doing. After everyone sees his 2,220 score on the second floor, rumors are flying around everywhere, with people talking about seeing him and others not even believing he's real. But everyone knows who he is, Kim Soohyun. Due to how powerful he is, guilds begin to scout Soohyun. In Seoul, at the Ares Guild office, Hachkun and a strange old man are talking about Soohyun too. He asks if Hachkun knows much about Soohyun, since they awakened around the same time, but Hachkun insists he's never seen him. Then, he asks how Hachkun is doing with the third floor, since even though he's doing it at level 8, there's a lot of competition now with Soohyun and he's falling behind. That's not good. With what this guy seemed to do in the future, I hope he stays friendly with Soohyun. Or maybe it's the Ares Guild that he destroys. I wonder. Hachkun insists that he just can't find anybody, but since he can't, he'll go by himself. The man is pleased by this, noting that he'll see if he can find anyone for Hachkun, and asks that he stays focused and tries to find Soohyun too. And as his parting remark, he ominously asks that Hachkun prepares for what's coming next. As Hachkun leaves, he thinks about Soohyun. As far as he knows, he hasn't seen him, but he wonders if the strange man he saw from earlier could be the genius rookie. Meanwhile, Soohyun continues to clear floors. He goes through the 3rd, 4th, and 5th with ease, going all the way up to the 9th, and doing this all at the highest difficulty level. But as he recalls from his previous life as an Awakener, the 10th floor was something like a boss fight to finish off the earlier 9, to the extent that many people said that the 11th and 12th floors were easier. And while he could reduce the difficulty, he knew that it'd make the later levels weirdly power scaled. He'd need to stay consistent. As he leaves home, he reflects. It's already the end of 2022, and in just a year, the Green Dungeon will appear in Anyang and the mass outbreak will begin. Humanity will stop seeing dungeons as a source of energy and will begin to genuinely be terrified for their continued survival. For this reason, he told his mother he was traveling so he could focus fully on completing the 10th floor. With that, he departs into the abyss. As he heads towards the gate to the 10th floor, he hears a voice. "Can you please spare some change?" Soohyun stops and considers his options, before giving the man a huge amount of points. He knows from his previous life that the man is the gatekeeper, and that, in exchange for your honest generosity, you can get any information you like. He asks about level 10, and the gatekeeper gives a vague warning. Beware of the chief. Knowing that the gatekeeper's advice is always true and purposeful, he heeds his warnings as he enters the 10th floor. As he enters the 10th floor, a small child picks berries. Before the child can even notice, he's attacked by a vicious, enormous salamander. As the child screams for his mother, Soohyun arrives just in time, grabbing him and activating his Berserker trait. He slashes and hacks the salamander into pieces before bringing the child into the village and back home. But just as he expects thanks and a warm welcome, the child's mother yells at him, calling him a kidnapper and telling him to go away, and that they own nothing he could possibly try to take with a ransom. Soohyun walks away, confused. The child watches from the window. As he walks through the village looking for a place to sit, he thinks about his mission. He's expected to save the dreary, hostile village from a terrible crisis. And with everyone watching him suspiciously from every corner, he knows that he has a lot of work to do. He isn't too concerned though. The people in the trials are scarily real, but as far as he knows, they're just NPCs, not sentient at all. Just as he sits down, he sees the small child staring from behind a tree. He comes out and hands Soohyun a bunch of berries before quickly running back and hiding again. Soohyun smiles. Despite what he thinks about the NPCs, I almost wonder if they are actually like real people, or maybe they are just automated and it'll get really creepy. He asks the child to come over again and gives him some food from his own pouch. The child begins to wolf the food down and explains that his mother and everyone in the village is so afraid because they don't have enough to eat. That makes him giving berries to Soohyun so much sweeter. I really wonder if they're actually just NPCs. He also mentions that the chief is a hero, and he's the one who's kept them safe and given them what food they do have. Remembering what the gatekeeper said, Soohyun is immediately suspicious. He asks for more information on why the chief is a hero and how exactly he keeps the village safe from monsters. But just as the child is about to answer, the chief appears and scolds Soohyun. He says that the food is an extremely rare resource in their town and that Soohyun will cause problems by handing it out so recklessly. This guy definitely sucks. Instead of trying to do anything, he just assumes that Soohyun is here to cause problems because he fed a little kid. After scolding him, the village chief tells Soohyun not to give food out without permission. I almost wonder if he's hoarding it for himself. The child looks nervous, and the chief tells him not to eat without permission. Yeah, this guy definitely sucks. Soohyun asks if he can stay in the village for a few nights, and the chief denies him, saying that the villagers are too wary of outsiders. Slightly angered, Soohyun argues back to the chief. He says that the child should be able to eat if he's hungry, and tells the chief that he won't cause any issues. After all, he has enough food for everyone to eat. He opens his dimensional pouch and shows the chief's assistant the incredible amount of food inside, and they look in absolute amazement. With that, he's given permission to stay. After sleeping a night in one of the spare houses, Soohyun decides to go to the center. Everyone is gathered around a stage, screaming prayers to a god. He's given a sad impression of the town, since many people became fervently religious towards the end of the world. He's just thankful that nobody became violent. Then, he sees what's happening on stage. A man is tied up and suspended over a trap door, and right as a robed man slashes the rope, he's sacrificed and dropped into the hole. The villagers weep, thankful for the sacrifice to the earth god to protect their village. And as Soohyun overhears, they'll be making another sacrifice in 3 days. He'll have to act before then to prevent another death. Meanwhile, the assistant is talking to the chief. They don't have another sacrifice chosen yet, so the chief asks about the outsider. They decide to use him as the next sacrifice, and plan to use a sleeping potion on Soohyun to make him easier to sacrifice. 3 days later, they lay the sleeping Soohyun over the trapdoor and drop him into the sacrificial chamber. As the chief walks down the long staircase into the hole, he thinks about the earth god. Years ago, a man-eating snake built a nest under their village, and he discovered it. Knowing that other monsters were afraid of it, he decided to harness its power to make it protect their village. And today, he's descending to check on the condition of the earth god. But just as he arrives in its giant underground nest, he finds the giant man-eating snake decapitated, and Soohyun standing beside its body. As Soohyun asks what brought the chief down into the snake's nest, the chief stares in complete shock. He begs to know how and why Soohyun killed their only protector, and Soohyun asks if it was really for the sake of the village. After all, he knows what the monster really was, the gluttonous snake. The gluttonous snake is a lazy beast. When it isn't eating, it's usually sleeping or feeding its babies, and it can form symbiotic relationships with the people who feed it, recognizing the person as a friend and posing no risk to them. The chief wasn't feeding it to protect the villagers, but just himself. Soohyun leaves and brings the snakehead to the surface, showing them that the chief lied about the earth god. The villagers begin to cry as they realize what really happened to their loved ones. But as they realize the snake was the only thing protecting them, they demand to know what they'll do now that they lost so many people and their village isn't even safe from monsters anymore. To answer that, Soohyun shows them the snake eggs he gathered from the nest. As he explains, the gluttonous snake befriends people who feed it. For that reason, if the villagers raise and befriend the snakes by feeding them monsters in rotation, they'll be protected by the snakes and won't have to die anymore. He offers to help teach them to hunt monsters. This doesn't appease the villagers though. They begin screaming, demanding to know how he could possibly expect them to catch monsters. Disappointed, Soo-hyun responds coldly that they could always go back to sacrificing villagers. Just as he's ready to give up with the village, the little child from earlier comes out from the crowd and says he wants to learn how to catch monsters from Soo-hyun. Inspired by the child, all of the villagers begin to excitedly ask to be taught too. If the child is brave enough to fight, they believe that they are too. Smiling, Soo-hyun agrees to help everyone. In the meantime though, the chief unhappily goes down another hidden corridor. While he might have lost his gluttonous snake, he still has one last resort, and he can show the villagers their mistake by destroying everything. With time and dedication from the villagers, they've continued to learn how to hunt monsters, and the baby snakes have been steadily growing. Unfortunately, Soo-hyun has stayed stuck at 90%, no matter what he tries to do. Just as he begins to brainstorm what he could do next, the ground begins violently shaking, and a flaming blue bird appears in the sky. The exiled chief follows closely as the bird flies in. Soo-hyun recognizes it as the holy bird of blue fire, and in terror, realizes that it's the natural enemy of the gluttonous snake and will kill all the hatchlings unless he's able to stop it. As he watches the chief approach, the holy bird turns towards him, screeching. Just as the chief admires how he's able to control such powerful monsters, the bird spits a huge volley of blue flames towards him, incinerating him into nothing immediately. Meanwhile, Soo-hyun begins to leap off of buildings to catch up and try to slash the bird. But just as he jumps into the air with his sword, it craftily flies away and dodges him. Then, the bird turns towards him and attacks him in midair, wounding him badly. As the holy bird turns away from him and keeps flying towards the village, Soo-hyun lands on the ground and wonders what he can do to protect the villagers. While they've become stronger, they just aren't strong enough yet. As the holy bird comes across two villagers and prepares to attack them, Soo-hyun quickly chases it, leaping into the air to attack again. This time, he throws one of his daggers with a rope to wrap the bird's beak, preventing it from incinerating the villagers. Then, to make the holy bird reachable, he begins to swing towards it on the rope to get closer. Activating his transformation skill, he steals the holy bird's incredible fire powers. Shin Soo-young is talking on the phone. The birds are singing outside. The people are going about their day, and most wonderful of all, nobody is dead yet. She tells a friend that Soo-hyun is doing fine, and that he's on a trip. She talks about what a completely different person the trip. She talks about, but unknown to her, Soo-hyun is currently trying not to burn to death. Soo-hyun is on fire thanks to the bird that he's currently trying to kill. The evil bird tries to break free from the rope bindings and tries kicking Soo-hyun away from it. It does eventually manage to get Soo-hyun off of him after a few tries, but before Soo-hyun can fall, he holds on just in time. Unfortunately, the bird is still way too hot for Soo-hyun to handle, literally. Soo-hyun realizes that he'll die if it continues getting this hot, and needs to do something about it. Just then, Soo-hyun remembers the necklace that he has, which snaps him out of his fear of sizzling like bacon and recovers from its burning attack. After cooling off thanks to the wonderful use of magic, Soo-hyun jumps off and dives down at the bird, weapon in hand. Slamming it into the bird's back, an exhausted Soo-hyun yells at the bird to just die already. Wouldn't that be easy? To win a fight by just telling the opponent to lose? The bird does fall, however, but decides to crash himself and Soo-hyun right in the middle of the village. Soo-hyun, exhausted from the fight, faints soon after. He wakes up to a young girl named Melly at the village hospital. The rest of the villagers are thankful that Soo-hyun has woken up too. As he sits up, he asks the thankful villagers about what happened while he almost died. The villagers tell Soo-hyun that the bird has been cut up and fed to the terrifying, creepy, and somewhat cute snakes nearby, so they won't have to be worried about them for a while. That's killing two birds with one stone. Well, just one bird, actually. Oh, okay, I'll continue with the story. The villagers were also amazed that Soo-hyun survived the bird's fiery attack, compared to everyone else that had died from it. They tell him that he only received a bit of bruising from falling from such a great height, but besides that, Soo-hyun will be fine. No limbs lost or broken bones. He's going to live without any issues. That's a fantasy manhwa protagonist for you. Melly dramatically hugs Soo-hyun, who soon gets a perfect achievement level for clearing the 10th floor trial. Realizing this, Soo-hyun knows that the villagers can live in peace now that there's nothing threatening them. But unfortunately for him, he's bombarded by a large crowd of villagers, so leaving the hospital is going to be a hassle for him. Sometime after recovering and dealing with the villagers, Soohyun begins to leave the village through a portal when Melly runs over to him. Although annoyed that she followed him, Melly just wanted to give him a gift before he left. Anyway, Melly wishes Soohyun luck in his future adventures and gives him berries that she had picked earlier. She tells Soohyun that he should eat them whenever he feels hungry before waving him off. And, well, off he goes into the portal. Elsewhere, two people named Choi Hakjun and Jung Dongyoung talk about Soohyun. Hakjun, who has reached the 15th floor of the trials and is at least a B rank, is told that if he manages to get Soohyun to join their guild during the upcoming evaluation, then he can act as Hakjun's replacement and Hakjun himself would be set free from his job, which apparently is something he really desires. Dongyoung, after dropping Hakjun off at the evaluation, tells him to come out as soon as possible so they can climb up the abyss before anyone else can. Hakjun is troubled by this, knowing that everyone involved are gonna have a bad time. He goes into the building and laments like a poet over how he has nothing at this point in his successful life. A bit overdramatic if you ask me. At the same time as Hakjun heads towards the evaluation, Soohyun also arrives. It seems that it has also been a while since Soohyun has done an evaluation, so it's time for him to get assessed and get his newest rank. But our protagonist doesn't really care about the cash that a new rank will bring him. He only cares about entering more dungeons and destroying more monsters. Soohyun is escorted to a waiting area where he notices people from different guilds at the back, scanning the area like hawks for new powerful recruits to snatch and probably use for their own gain. We then see a man in the building yelling at employees at the agency over his rank, which is a big fat D, which the man thinks should be a C at least given how powerful he is magic-wise. The employer apologizes and tells the angered man that measurements have recently changed, but the man is still angry and looks like he's going to deliver a few punches to the poor man who didn't do anything. Jeez, take a chill pill. Hakjun soon stops him and takes him down in an instant and in style. He's surprised that there are still people that throw tantrums like him. Boy, will he be shocked if he ever crosses a Karen. Soohyun notices a plain-looking bracelet on the angry man's wrist, who demands that Hakjun lets him go. Hakjun, however, notices the bracelet too, which grants people a temporary boost in power. So, his rank was okay, he was just cheating. The item appears to be rare and probably sells well in markets for a pretty penny. Hakjun mocks the restrained man, who continues insulting him. He isn't having it and tells the man that he should retake the evaluation without the bracelet, if he can even feel his arm at this point. The man is soon escorted off the premises when he doesn't reevaluate his status, having been caught out for cheating the system. Soon after that little scene happens, Soohyun approaches Hakjun, which causes the well-dressed rich boy to become worried as he turns towards Soohyun and remembers seeing him on the second floor of the trial. The two men talk soon, revealing that this is the first time both men are doing their evaluations. Soohyun reveals to the questioning Hakjun that he had recently started and was quite busy, hence why he didn't have time to do his evaluation until now. He also didn't want to stand out that much during it, like some sort of show-off in a classroom. Soohyun is stunned, however, to learn about the large amount of cash he'll get as rewards if he gets a higher rank. So maybe he did care a bit about the money after all. Soohyun also points out that Hakjun could have done dungeon runs even when he was on the 15th floor, but Hakjun was busy doing stuff as well. However, because of his over-the-top reaction, something tells Soohyun that he's not exactly telling the truth. Hakjun is soon called for his evaluation before he can introduce himself to Soohyun. Soohyun thinks about Hakjun, remembering from before he went back in time that he performed a massacre on his own guild for an unknown reason, which he is rather curious about now. Hakjun soon does his evaluation, and his rank soon turns out to be an almighty B, shocking the crowd as he's been an Awakener for only a year, which is also the reason why he's a part of Ares, even if he is due to betray them soon. Soohyun congratulates Hakjun for his rank, but he doesn't seem too happy over it. Soohyun is then called next, and Hakjun quickly becomes on alert when he realizes that Soohyun is in the building, somewhere. He just needs to find him now, as he could be anywhere. This is because they haven't yet introduced themselves, so he doesn't know he's been speaking with the person he's been looking for this whole time. The crowd is surprised that he's there too, given the numerous stories about Soohyun. Soohyun himself soon gets up from his chair and waves Hakjun goodbye. This surprises Hakjun as he discovers Soohyun's identity. Now he has to recruit him to Ares so that he can be free. During the evaluation, Soohyun is told to use a tiny bit of magic on the machine. However, given how OP he is, he uses a little too much magic, and it sends out a magical wave through the room that even Hakjun could feel. Soohyun's rank is revealed to be a C, which surprises Hakjun as Soohyun's magic would have gotten him an A rank instead of a C after the stunt he just pulled. The rest of the crowd just thinks that it's something else that has the same name as Soohyun, and that the Soohyun on stage is just a different person with weaker magic, having not felt the magical essence that Soohyun had shot out of himself compared to Hakjun. Hakjun is now sure that the Soohyun on stage is the person that he's looking for now. As Soohyun is led off the stage to get his identification card, Hakjun wonders why someone like Soohyun isn't showing off some more, as he thinks that he should get a higher ranking for his abilities. Soohyun hopes that the crowd thinks that he's not the well-known hero as he's leaving the agency. After all, he doesn't want to be recognized. He's just glad that he was able to stop his powers before it got worse. He could have blown the whole building up by mistake. Soohyun then thinks about his stats and how they have rapidly increased these last few days following him clearing the 10th floor. That raid also gave him some rewards, such as a flame ability related to the bird that he had killed while saving the village. He also bought a random egg from a magic store that has a holy beast inside. Soohyun doesn't know what the creature will look like until it hatches, but hopefully it'll grow into a big and strong dragon that he can burn his enemies with. Hakjun comes out of the agency soon after, as Soohyun is leaving and calls out to him. Soohyun takes his chance to reveal his rank to Hakjun, unaware that he already knows since, he was there and all. Before Hakjun can offer Soohyun the chance to join his guild, the two are approached by the angry man from earlier. Remember the cheater? Apparently he wishes to beat Hakjun up after what he did to him earlier. He clearly wasn't there when Hakjun was announced to be a B rank. Before Hakjun does anything, Donghyun arrives and stops the man using an ability. Donghyun tells Hakjun that he was late with meeting him, and he is also annoyed that Hakjun is not referring to him as Hyung, which means older brother in Korean, and reminds him to do that. However, Hakjun doesn't seem too pleased with seeing him. He looks over towards Soohyun, and Donghyun realizes that Hakjun has made a new friend and wishes to test him by asking him for his name. This causes Hakjun to panic, and he tries to signal for Soohyun to leave, but he isn't good with charades. It looks like he's going to keep his name a secret at first, like Hakjun is desperately trying to tell him to do. However, Soohyun is not one to be cowering against some random guy, and seems to want a challenge, so he properly introduces himself to Donghyun, smiling like a pro. Hakjun tries to tell Donghyun that Soohyun is not the person that they're looking for, as he only has the same name as the legendary hero, but his rank in the test was not on par with him. Donghyun basically tells him to shut up quite rudely. He asks Soohyun if he can check his Awakener identification card to confirm that he's not the person that he's trying to recruit. Soohyun obliges, and Donghyun is disappointed that Soohyun is not the supposed legendary hero he's looking for and starts to leave. He tells Soohyun that even if he's not the hero, he can still try out for his guild, but Soohyun tells him point blank that he's not interested in joining. Wow, this boy has guts. This causes Donghyun to stop and glare back towards Soohyun like the arch villain he was born to play. Soohyun then explains that he would feel unsafe in a guild like Donghyun's after what he just did to the angry man that attacked Hakjun. But Donghyun defends his actions, for he's a rich man who can get away with anything due to his status and how strong he is, and that the man deserved it for being a D ranker. I mean, maybe he deserved to be stopped because he was a violent man, but what's up with these reasons? They're all shallow and entitled. Caring much? Donghyun realizes that he and Soohyun think differently. He tells Soohyun of an unwritten rule to Fight Club, Awakeners, that nobody should interfere in a fight between them, even if it kills them in the process. He also tells Soohyun that a guildmaster like him is strong enough to avoid crimes like a massacre, and that people would be desperate to join a guild like his own. So he's basically trying to flex his money and power in front of some rando. To be honest, he's the one who sounds a bit desperate, trying to seem all mighty and important. As Donghyun and Hakjun leave, Hakjun apologizes for his guardian's actions just now. Soohyun decides to give him his phone number in case he wishes to call him sometime, since they're buddies now. How heartwarming. Later that day, Soohyun does more research on Donghyun. It turns out that he used to be a gangster that would get into fistfights with people before he became an Awakener, but left that life behind in order to join Ares. But it seems that Donghyun used to be involved in shady illegal businesses that really wouldn't look good on his permanent record. Did he really leave that life behind? Soohyun thinks that Donghyun is hiding something sinister given his past, and what he did to that test cheater today. This makes him realize why Hakjun was uncomfortable around Donghyun, which makes him even more curious as to why a nice rich guy like Hakjun would cause a sinister massacre as he did in his past life. Soohyun then looks outside to realize that it's snowing now. He hasn't seen snow for a while. When the end of the world happened in his old timeline, the earth froze over and it stopped snowing and raining. Soohyun realizes that it's going to be a new year soon, and that he was so caught up with Hakjun and the upcoming rank examination that he had forgotten to do something important. On New Year's Day, a dungeon incident is due to happen where a group of people were murdered during a raid in his past life. Soohyun is worried that he'll fail the exam and not get the certification that he needs, and thus won't be able to prevent the incident from happening. But we know he'll most definitely get that certificate. After all, he is the protagonist. He even wonders if they'll accept a supposed average him, as he has no experience when it comes to dungeon conquests. He then remembers when he gave Hakjun his phone number and reluctantly decides to create a bait. Meanwhile, Lee Joo-ho and a red-haired woman named Kim Ba-reun are looking over potential candidates for this upcoming Gwangju dungeon raid on New Year's Day. While Ba-reun thinks that the candidates are alright, Joo-ho thinks they're all nobodies, which he's not very in favor of. The woman thinks that Joo-ho should stop being so tense and picky about new candidates. Joo-ho, however, cares more about the safety of the raid, and they need one more person to join it. Ba-reun accuses Joo-ho of being a coward and points out that the group will get less rewards if more people join it, completely disregarding the safety of said people since she just wants to send in hunters that might be unqualified. Just then, the two get a new candidate for the raid, who turns out to be Soohyun. With this timely arrival, now all the slots are full. A dungeon difficulty is decided by the color of the rainbow it represents, and the Gwangju raid is orange, which means it's the second easiest dungeon to take on, while the highest difficulty for a dungeon being violet. Soohyun knows that this raid will be a special case for those involved. A lot of backstabbing, drama, and deaths will likely occur. He arrives at the group as they prepare for the raid. Joo-ho meets with Soohyun and introduces himself as the group leader. After telling the group of Soohyun's arrival, one of them quickly worships and gushes at the legendary hero's presence like a crazy fanboy. But Joo-ho tells the man, Min-suk, that he's just someone with a similar name as the legendary hero, and tells him that the Soohyun that will be joining them is only a C ranker, bursting poor Min-suk's bubble. But at least he calms down soon after. Soohyun is happy that the group hasn't discovered the truth about him yet, but decides not to reveal his powers until the time is right, and he has to act all heroic and steal the spotlight. A woman named Lee Eun-mi doesn't look too happy with seeing Soohyun, as she thought that Soohyun was the legendary hero too, and starts trying to pick a fight with Soohyun. But Ba-reun stops Eun-mi and scolds her like a child throwing a tantrum. Soohyun knows a little information about Ba-reun, like how she's Joo-ho's friend and that she'll be the vice captain of this raid. A kinder woman, named Kim Ye-eun, introduces herself to Soohyun. She will be the healer of the group. She also tells Soohyun not to be too upset with Eun-mi, as she is a Karen. She even has a similar hairstyle as one too. Ye-eun believes that Eun-mi doesn't have any ill intent against Soohyun, but he doubts it. Ye-eun expresses excitement at working alongside Soohyun. He, however, is more concerned about a mysterious shady-looking man standing away from the group, who definitely won't betray them later. Ye-eun doesn't know who he is either, and neither does Ba-reun or Joo-ho. She tells Soohyun that the man doesn't want to reveal their name or face due to personal reasons. However, she does assure Soohyun that Joo-ho and Ba-reun have checked his identification card, so he's probably alright to be around in spite of his suspicious appearance. Yeah, I'm sure he is. As Joo-ho announces the dungeon trip, Soohyun remembers the dungeon raid murders being reported on the news in the old timeline, and the reason it gained so much coverage was because it involved 5 people dying in an easy dungeon. But it was reported 6 people had gone into the dungeon, meaning that the 6th member of the group had most probably harmed the other 5. However, in this timeline, with Soohyun joining the group, the total number of the group has been raised to 7. His intention for the raid is to find out who the killer is and stop them before it's too late. He just wonders who it is that is sus among the group. I mean, I'd probably go with the man who doesn't want to even share his name, but that seems too obvious. Joo-ho asks Soohyun if he heard what he said. He stops thinking about the killer and tells Joo-ho that he did memorize what he said, but clearly he didn't. The group enters the portal to the Gwangju dungeon. Joo-ho assures everyone not to be worried as the raid is easy to complete and that there's only a few monsters to fight. Right then, a giant Cyclops stands behind him. So much for being a safe raid. Soohyun is shocked by the Cyclops as they only appear in dungeons that are higher difficulty. So why is there one in an orange dungeon? The Cyclops raises its clobber and throws it down towards the group, which lets out a large explosion. The group manages to get out of the way of the Cyclops clobber swing, although Eunmi sort of falls over in the process. Soo-hyun realizes that something is wrong if a Cyclops is in this dungeon, as it only appears in yellow dungeons or higher. He realizes that the dungeon the group has entered is a growth type dungeon, which is a special kind of dungeon that rises in difficulty the more a group goes further into it. He wonders if this is the group's cause of death in the original timeline, instead of them being murdered, as the killer would be unable to change the dungeon difficulty. Juho yells at the group to stay together. In spite of the dungeon difficulty, Soo-hyun thinks that there is someone sus in the group and intends to take them down like some sort of intelligent master detective. Eunmi, in the meanwhile, yells at the group that they should be running back through the portal instead of just standing around. She also believes that they're in a yellow dungeon instead of an orange one because of the monster. The sudden tension causes the group to start arguing, except for Soo-hyun, who just observes. However, the Cyclops won't wait for them to finish arguing and comes back to face the group. Soo-hyun nearly gets crushed but jumps out of the way in time as the Cyclops charges towards the other members of the group. With how distracted the other members of the group are, they're unable to notice the Cyclops heading towards them, and it tries to hit Barun. Luckily, Juho jumps in the way and protects her, but he is caught off guard by a beam attack that the Cyclops fires at him. The group watches in horror as Juho hits a nearby wall. Ow, that's gotta hurt. As Juho recovers, he notices the Cyclops approaching him and preparing to finish him off. However, Soo-hyun saves Juho, surprising the man at how easily he has deflected the attack. Barun runs over to Juho to check on him. Soo-hyun is happy to see that Juho didn't receive any major injuries from the beam blast, and being thrown towards the wall and leaps away from the Cyclops after pushing his clobber away. This surprises the group given Soo-hyun's athletic ability, although they probably think that he's just good at gym class instead of being a super powerful ranker. Soo-hyun tells the group that running away in this kind of dungeon is not an option. The suspicious man tells the confused group members that the entrance that they went through has been blocked, and that in yellow dungeons and higher difficulty dungeons, there is a separate entrance and exit. Which means that for the group to escape the dungeon alive, they must find a new exit somewhere deep within the creepy dungeon. Juho confirms that the man and Soo-hyun are right, but he is just as confused as everyone else as to why the dungeon's difficulty changed. Just then, an earthquake hits the dungeon, and the group are soon swarmed by mysterious but scary looking cave creatures that surround them, ready to pounce on them. Soo-hyun tells the group that if they want to get out of this part of the dungeon, they must start fighting right now. He and his group are fighting for their lives, and trying not to get torn apart by the creepy cave crawlers that have noticed them. I'd sure hate to be in their shoes. Lee Juho, the group's leader, is planning to take down the Cyclops. However, the last time he tried, he almost became a bacon barbecue burger. But it's his life, I guess. He's going to have a little trouble getting to the Cyclops though, seeing as how more and more cave crawlers are coming towards the group at an alarming rate. Fortunately, since the group has Soo-hyun, he's going to take them down. If they didn't, then their story would have probably ended here. Or maybe he will, since he's apparently going to face the Cyclops himself. After all, the cave crawlers are just lower level enemies compared to the Cyclops, so he's going to take it down instead. Soo-hyun has a secret skill that he could use to defeat the crawlers with one hit, but he doesn't want to reveal it yet as he thinks the creatures are not worthy of him using it. Soon enough, Soo-hyun sees his goal in sight, the Cyclops, who is confused as to where the party has gone. His aim is to take out the Cyclops' eye as it's his weak point, but not the one on his face. Contrary to the usual Cyclops lore, this Cyclops has another eye somewhere else on his body. Soo-hyun just has to find it, but where can that sneaky other eye be? Soo-hyun starts taking on the Cyclops, with his first goal being to force him to let go of that clobber he has. However, there is also another reason as to why Soo-hyun wants the Cyclops to let go of that clobber, besides the fact that it is an OP weapon that would wipe out the party like flicking a fly with the newspaper. The Cyclops' hidden eye just so happens to be in his palm. He has been using the clobber to protect it from someone like Soo-hyun from stabbing it and losing one of his sights. But that doesn't last, since Soo-hyun happens to use his sword to go under the Cyclops' palm, thus entering his hidden eye. Now that he has completed his goal, Soo-hyun just needs to go back to his group. They're surprisingly struggling against the low-level cave crawlers. I guess they were tougher than they thought they were going to be. Soo-hyun returns to the group after his victory against the Cyclops, or so he thought, as the Cyclops still manages to find the group and reach for Soo-hyun, who is surprisingly shocked that his blow didn't kill it. Well, after all, he didn't take out his main eye. Soo-hyun soon discovers that the pesky Cyclops has another hidden eye in his other hand. It stares at him smugly over being fooled, and if it had a mouth, it would probably laugh at him too. And then it crushes him, with the party shocked at his sudden death. May Soo-hyun rest in peace. Well, that's it for the story. I hope you liked it. Kidding. Lee Eunmi, the magician of the group, seems to be the only one angry that he died. However, it turns out that Soohyun has survived the attempt on his life. Using an ability and leveling it up, he soon bounces away from the Cyclops grip to begin his rematch against him. Thanks to having gained 2 abilities from the previous 2 bosses that he faced, Soohyun feels as powerful as he was before. It will likely be temporary until that evil Cyclops gets taken down, and then he'll turn back into the protagonist we've known all this time. Juho, concerned for Soohyun's safety after the whole, almost getting crushed by the Cyclops thing, tries to see if he's alright, but Soohyun bounces away to continue his fight. Firstly, by taking down a couple of those creepy cave crawlers to test out the new skills that he inherited, and then reaching the Cyclops to finish him off with the fast speeding ability that he now has. This impresses Juho, and from what I'm seeing, me too. Juho was so impressed by Soohyun's skill that a cave crawler almost gets him. Fortunately, the neglectful Juho sees the crawler in time and makes away with it before ordering the group to do their part of the battle. Happy that the group is being smart in this battle now, Soohyun finally gets around to finishing the Cyclops off. He finally blows the monster up instantly with his special ability, which also destroys the smug hidden eye that he has. It is probably crying in the afterlife now. The group recovers from the tough fight that they were thrown into just now. However, they're still trapped in the spooky cave dungeon with no idea about where the exit is. Also, that sus man who doesn't want to reveal his identity happens to be missing. There's also the matter of fact that the group will likely face more creepy monsters in this dungeon too if they keep going. And they might even be stronger than the Cyclops, but it looks like they're not going to last long with how exhausted they look. Calling the agency is out of the question too, because the situation they're all in hasn't happened before to any other group. I don't know why this is an actual reason not to ask for help, but okay. The group decides to rest for a bit until they're energetic again. Soohyun, however, is freaking out when he realizes he exposed his abilities to the rest of the group, which will make him highly suspicious to them. But they don't appear to say anything. Not Juho, the co-leader of the raid, Kim Ba-dun, or the team's healer, Kim Yeon at least. Yeon soon begins treating Soohyun's wounds. She even compliments how well Soohyun had done against the Cyclops, due to how difficult killing one can be. Is this a hint that she might know he's actually the legendary top ranker? It seems as though Yeon is just as suspicious about the rest of the group as Soohyun is, which, after dealing with Eunmi, is understandable. She's mainly suspicious about Ba-dun and Juho, however, having heard a few shady things regarding them on the internet, like how they talk badly about the groups they lead and hog all the rewards they get in dungeons. This information actually clues Soohyun in on what happened to the group in the original timeline. Smiling as he gets the "I got it" look, he watches as Juho approaches him and Yeon, who wants to talk to him about something, but only him. Yeon's just going to stay out of their convo. Yeon is worried that her new friend is just going to wander off with a suspicious person, but Soohyun has ace up his sleeve, as he wishes to ask Juho something in return. The conversation between Soohyun and Juho takes place off-screen. Judging by the overly serious look Juho has on his face, it doesn't appear the odds are in his favor, given how relaxed Soohyun looks. The group begin their trek through the dungeon, now that there's nothing in the way. For now at least, as Yeon obviously points out. Ba-dun wishes to know how the conversation went, as well as their secret and probably sinister plan. Juho confirms that the plan that they have has been cancelled, which stuns Ba-dun, who happens to have wanted to stick it no matter what. However, Juho has a reason as to why this plan has been cancelled, as something sinister, and likely monstrous, awaits the group as they come across a fantasy-looking door on their journey to find the dungeon exit. Amidst all this, Soohyun has a plan himself that's about to go into motion, which is to expose Juho and Ba-dun for what they really are to the rest of the group. Fortunately, the group gets through the door without that much of a hassle, taking them into a castle-like room as they continue looking for the exit. It quickly becomes clear that they have not reached the center of the dungeon, so they're likely not even close to the exit just yet. Eunmi notices a shiny-looking but probably dangerous door that she thinks might be the exit, and being scared and inexperienced, she runs over to the door, hoping to finally escape this creepy dungeon. But by doing so, she activates a trap, which at first congratulates the group for making it this far into the dungeon, before beginning the trial that will likely kill them all if they don't act fast. Soohyun knew that this dungeon wouldn't end this easily after killing a Cyclops, as the real trial is about to begin for them. The question now isn't if Soohyun will escape, but if his new friends will too. Except for Juho and Ba-dun, who are suspicious, and where did the sus man even disappear to? To clear a dungeon, the group must complete a certain objective, like how Soohyun saved Melly's village. In this case, there are multiple methods that the group can choose from in order to complete the dungeon. They can either fight the monsters or evade them for 30 minutes, and if the group just stands around and does nothing, then the dungeon system will just choose it for them to save time. Due to how cruel systems like this can be, it will probably pick the first method to give the group a real challenge. The group becomes stumped with which option to choose. Eunmi, as always, wants to pick the second method so they can evade the enemies, seeing it as the easier method than fighting them all. This gets her into an argument with another member of the group, Minseok, who wants all of those glorious rewards that Juho and Parun will probably steal. Parun herself even gets dragged into the argument instead of helping Juho pick a method. With all of this going on, Juho decides that Soohyun should decide after staring at him intently, and passes off giving Soohyun the choice as a way to thank him for taking down the Cyclops for the group. Eunmi is annoyed when Soohyun decides to pick the first method, and accuses him of having bloodlust after taking down the Cyclops earlier. Soohyun just ignores the screaming woman and tells the group that it's easier to just fight the monsters than to just run away and get picked off one by one like a group in a horror movie. Plus, behind that golden door, there's probably even stronger monsters than the Cyclops from earlier. Or not. The group doesn't even know what's behind the door yet. For this, Soohyun thinks they should come up with a plan, with Juho taking over again and suggesting they form a circle, like they did earlier, and just take down the monsters again like before. Since it worked before, it will hopefully work again. Getting into a circle formation, the group prepares for battle, though Eunmi doesn't look too happy with the decision. The door finally opens as a wide range of cave crawlers and fish people begin to come out towards the door and towards the group, as well as dragons and spiders that likely drop acid. That's probably way more than expected. They charge forward and already Juho is having a hard time taking on the monsters. Fortunately again, Soohyun comes to the rescue before the lizard could kill him. He then takes down the lizard man that tries to harm Juho, while the rest of the group fight in their own unique ways. As Soohyun continues to fight, someone is watching them. It is likely the man in the hoodie that's been traveling with the group all this time, and Soohyun knows it. He wonders when the man is going to make his move. Either he's against the group, or he wants to somehow escape while they fight. It appears to be that he wanted to escape, because as the golden door opens, the group turns and each is horrified by what they see. The same man from before, dead before them, having fallen into a trap that he was too late to escape from. His now unmoving body quickly puts the group on edge during the middle of this fierce battle. The mystery guy gets pierced by spikes, blocking the entrance, making every guild member terrified. Who wouldn't get flustered seeing something like that? Virtually no one. Except there's one. Soohyun kept his cool trying to evaluate the situation. Talk about main character energy. At the same time this mystery guy got killed recklessly, the monster invasion is still happening and the guildmaster with authority called order and their information. Here comes the monsters. Soohyun is still high on Cyclops killing adrenaline and dices and slices monsters alongside other guild members like he does it for breakfast. Clearing this wave and expecting the next, Soohyun and Juho, the guildmaster, decide to run out of the now accessible exit. As the whole guild heads out with Juho, Soohyun informs them that he'll stay behind and fend off the next wave alone. He also called Kim Ye-eun the guild's C-rank healer. Now, the train of thought would be that he wants her to stay back because he needs a regular HP boost and revival for major injuries. Well, Soohyun suspected her to be the culprit instead, about to wipe out the entire squad. Juho takes the guild out the door and locks it, leaving Yeon behind. We'll realize later on that they had a little talk. It will come as the story continues. It's giving anime energy. Okay, I'll get back to the script. Then he noticed that she set conditions to favor her assassination, even using the suspicious mystery guy as bait. This evil chick brought out her big kegs with crocodile tears while reaching for a freaking knife to attack Soohyun. Trust your protagonist, he already knew, and Yeon realizes she's not dealing with an average C-ranker, but the Kim Soohyun from the rumors. Slashing off her blouse handle, also injuring her a little, we see another guild brand. Turns out this guild is a low-key guild, called Dump Guild, that thrives in crime, violence, and evil. They aren't popular at the moment, but Soohyun recognizes them because they become feared in the future. Enough to be a rival threat to the Outbreak. Imagine how evil they have got to be. Yeon did not deny but bragged about how dumb Soohyun is because when the monsters come, she'll use her special skill, Stealth, to escape without being noticed, just as she opened the door the first time, killing the mystery guy. Little did she know, she's done for as our guy wounded her on purpose. Stealth, as good as it is skill, cannot hide the smell of blood. Shocked beyond measure, she realizes she's done for and hurries to the door, but the monsters already pull up and did her in no time. Soohyun on the other hand gets ready with the chopping and slashes, taking on the whole wave alone. Being realistic, he can't possibly kill all the monsters, but wait, let's let him cook. In the next chapter, we see him use Holy Flame to roast the ops, talking about a grand barbecuing style. Using Holy Flame after letting the number of monsters build, he obliterates the whole wave in flames. Meanwhile, Juho, while running out of the dungeon, explains the little conversation he had with Soohyun that I mentioned earlier. He asks Soohyun if he really is a C ranker and not the one from the rumors. Soohyun, for some reason, seeing the awesome leadership skills Juho had shown, decides to trust him and admits he's the one from the rumors. He also tells Juho about his plan to find out the culprit for a murder about to happen. Juho explains this to his assistant and feels the need to go back for Soohyun, being a good guild leader and all. He heads back to the floor to meet his greatest surprise, the rumored floor clearer at work. Trying to understand how awesome the person he came to rescue is, Soohyun, shocked, finishes off the last of the monsters. They have no chance for a breather as they have to face the final boss of the floor, a skeleton-like mage creature which Soohyun later calls a lick. Licks are skeleton-like creatures that are sustained by an etherstone called the Lifestone. These creatures can launch long-range attacks and control the dead, and due to the Lifestone being a major weakness, evolve the skill of teleportation, helping them avoid attacks. Pretty fancy cowards if you ask me. This particular one got pissed after Soohyun provokes him with the title Half-Lick, since it was a partial lick. Soohyun and Juho prepare to face off against this angered lick who just summoned an army of dead monsters. Combat begins with the lick. Due to the difficulty of facing a lick even for a B ranker, Soohyun put Juho in a circle of holy flame to protect him from the army of monsters now surrounding him. Soohyun starts to face the lick, first with a leap and light speed slash, but it easily dodged it, using teleportation which left Soohyun in shock. Next, he tries to launch a holy flame long range attack since the lick is keeping its distance. Again, his attack dodged by the lick and countered with the magical surge which Soohyun manages to dodge. Not really a fruitful fight as he aims for the jewel on the lick's forehead, the mana stone or life source for the lick, which is the ether stone we talked about earlier. He thinks about other strategies he could use to clear this now annoying boss. Our protagonist is having a problem besting a monster, and after a series of attacks and combos, he is forced to realize he is not as strong as he wishes he would be. Meanwhile, Juho did not like the reality check he was receiving, given his status as a B ranker and not being able to do anything besides be protected. He decides to help out, pulls out his sword, and uses the holy fire Soohyun surrounded him with. He fights off the monsters around him. Seeing Juho defend himself from the monsters and also noticing the change in energy level, Soohyun decides to go back and join him to take out the monsters first, then this troublesome lick next. Swords go slicing as the duo go through the monsters like slicing through butter. After the monsters were done, they go back to their major problem, the lick. First, they attack individually and in sync, but to no avail. Soohyun decides to come up with a strategy that combines their attacks and skills. Pretty beautiful to look at if you ask me. Before that, the duo shows some exclusive teamwork as Soohyun propels Juho in the air to attack while using Leap, his skill that enables high jump to jump and land a 2-on-1 attack. The lick anticipated this and easily dodged the attacks, but gave priority to Soohyun's attack since he was the stronger one, underestimating Juho. Soohyun tries to deal a finishing blow, but his sword breaks into pieces as a result of an attack from the lick that causes anything it hits to wither as time goes on. This unexpected twist gets better. I mean, it would be disappointing if it didn't. The lick, seeing this, laughs at Soohyun's lack of a weapon, but trust the main character, there's always a backup plan for any twist. So good it reminds me of anime with an overpowered main character. Their strategy for defeating did not put Soohyun as the man to land the finishing blow, but Juho, who the lick overlooks and underestimates. From behind the lick, Juho attacks midair with a slash intended to kill. He cuts the lick into 2 clean halves, from the crown of the head where the etherstone is, down into 2 splits ending with the lick's mana source. I never knew how well bilateral symmetry in my bio classes worked until I saw this. I didn't exaggerate with the clean bit. I'll get back to the script now. As they clear the floor and the lick fades, he mumbles something about a king returning and bringing terror with him. This for some reason scares Soohyun as it rings a bell for some event in the future. The duo managed to escape the floor after clearing it and collecting rewards, but not through the main exit as rescue squads, news crews, and a lot of ruckuses were present. They hide and watch the whole exploding situation as they figure out how to quietly leave. Juho thanks Soohyun and hands him a bag of etherstones gotten as a reward for clearing the floor. He explains that Soohyun is the only reason they came out alive and cleared the floor, and he would not feel entitled to half the rewards. Soohyun accepts the bag and points out what a good leader Juho was, and how much of a help he was in clearing the floor. This made Juho really hopeful about leading the guild. The protagonist and guild leader have a moment of adoration for each other, a true bro moment. Still on the issue of leaving without any drama, Soohyun did not want to reveal his identity to the general public, so Juho offered a quiet exit option. He called a taxi driver who was also a friend to come pick up Soohyun. I'm just gonna leave out the small talk Soohyun is having with the taxi driver about his relationship with Juho and how tired he looks. I might also add that his exhaustion level is way high. Soohyun, before heading home, went to an Etherstone exchange company to exchange the stones he was just given for real money. On hearing Soo-hyun's rank, the head of the department did not take him seriously till he was told the amount of Etherstones and he saw it for himself. Seeing how young Soo-hyun was and the number of Etherstones he had, not to forget the Lifestone he got as a reward for, well, the department head deciding to rip him off and maximize profit. Did you really believe your protagonist would be ripped off that easily, like stealing candy from a baby? No. He swiftly collects the Lifestone that the man valued for its rarity and gives the terms for the exchange, taking charge of the situation, making 600,000 while at it. If that isn't a main character move, I don't know what is. Soo-hyun heads home after leaving the exchange, glad he now has money and he doesn't need to bother his mother for any. On getting home, he sees his mother's worn out face and it troubles him. She welcomes him warmly. The warmth he lacked in his past life is being showered on him. He sits his mother down, asking her to rest a little. He informs her he wants to stop school and become an awakener that he already is. After being told the wound on her face was from her attending to drunk customers at a restaurant, he proceeds to ask her to quit her job and discloses he is an awakener and he earns a good amount of money after she shows her worry on how they would survive and sponsor his education. Soo-hyun showed his mother his balance, which left her in shock as she saw the 600,000 he had in the account. Excited at the fact that they were now rich, she defends her excitement, saying it's human to love money. And all I have to say, mother's right. She hurries to prepare a grand dinner to celebrate and continue the warmth Soo-hyun was enjoying currently. He gets flashbacks of his past life, remembering how cold his mother was to him and seeing a clear difference between the two mothers. One says she would support his ambitions because he's a son she is proud of, and the other says he can never be a great awakener, and he should work harder to become a son she would consider being proud of. We are also made to remember what we saw at the beginning of the story as she shoved him into the hungry multitude. After a while, it dawns on Soo-hyun that to go on more quests, he would need a new weapon as the Lick destroyed his sword. He then decides to go to his master weaponsmith, Kim Tae-ho Ajashi, who he knew in his past life. Since there is no established relationship between them presently, Tae-ho acts grumpy and disinterested towards Soo-hyun until he shows him a bag full of rare ether stones. Will he build a relationship as good as the one he had, where swords were made for free due to how dear they both were to each other? I guess our protagonist is so good at what he does that he doesn't need to pay to get stuff. Kim Soo-hyun's favorite sword, Balmung, the holy sword that slays dragons, is what Soo-hyun needs alongside growth and strength to face the monsters in the Anyang City outbreak where he lost in his past life. Balmung is the sword he used as Kim Sung-in, the hero awakener. It was also used by hero Siegfried to slay dragons. It was also crafted by the one and only Kim Tae-ho Ajashi. Ajashi is a Korean word used for Mr. or uncle, and it can be a way to refer to the middle-aged man as well as be used as an item of endearment, just like the Japanese titles Dono, Chan, Kun, usually used when there's a beyond cordial relationship. Soo-hyun arrives at the workshop and deja vu hits him as he remembers walking through these same doors when the sword was made by Daeho before. The last time Balmung was crafted, Sung-in refused to take the sword because Daeho poured the entirety of his resources and materials to make it, even the ones he saved for magnum opus. Daeho, who he had a close relationship with then, told him that the world and the people in it expect and take a lot from him, the hero. Using the last of his resources was just a way for Daeho to give him support and compensate him for all the danger he keeps off. His humble way of helping without asking for compensation. He also did it because he is the only one that could forge Balmung, just as Sung-in was the only awakener who could protect the people. In the end, Sung-in failed to save his swordsmith, his benefactor, but that would change as he vows to save him this time and stop the outbreak. Soo-hyun knocks on the door and is greeted by an angsty middle-aged man, Daeho. Daeho asks what he wants and tells him to go away when he finds out Soo-hyun wants him to make a sword. Daeho tells him he doesn't craft swords for any snot that comes his way. Daeho soon changes his mind when Soo-hyun tells him he brought the material and would love for him to see them, knowing fully well that Daeho can't turn down working with the highest rank Etherstone, only talked about and rarely seen in this time frame. The Etherstone was a super high rank one that came as a reward for defeating the Lick, and is also a reason for raiding the Gwangju dungeon. Daeho Ajashi welcomes him into the workshop and asks what he wants. Soo-hyun establishes why he came there. Daeho agrees to make the sword and decides to get a contract, but Soo-hyun, knowing Daeho loves the process of working on the materials and not the sword itself or its profit, declines, saying there was no need for one and explains why. Daeho laughs at this and took a liking to Soo-hyun. They make a deal and Soo-hyun gets a 10-month production time and an efficient sword to pass the time with. Now equipped with the sword, he enters the Abyss. Am I the only one who wonders if the floors are endless or if it's just a dreadful but cool name? Oh, okay, I'll get back to the script. Our main character challenges the 11th floor and clears it perfectly, spending some time with his mom, and clears the 12th, also ranking the highest. This perfectionist does the same for the next floors till the 16th, where he decides to take a break. I guess all work and no play applies to main characters too. Good stuff. Half a year later, Soo-hyun calls Juho, who is hospitalized, and asks for a favor. Juho eagerly answers his phone and listens attentively to the requests of his favorite awakener. Soohyun asks for 3 things. The first is for him to search for good buildings for awakeners to live in. The second is to look into the activities of the Dump Guild, even though that all ended with Kim Ye-eun, because there is no way they didn't know someone stopped the mission they had and killed one of their members in the Orange Dungeon. The third is assistance with the outbreak. Soohyun informs Juho that on Christmas Eve, December 24th, there will be a massive outbreak of monsters in Anyang City, and lots of lives will be lost. It sure would suck if that happened here. Shocked as well as scared, he asks Soohyun how he knows, and even though Soohyun refuses to reveal how, he still trusts him anyways. Soohyun asks for help in clearing the dungeon the outbreak will begin from. With less than half a year to face the outbreak, Soohyun is determined to get stronger and be ready for Balmung when it is fully crafted. He also aims to clear the 20th floor as they would enable him to take on monsters during the outbreak, but he can only do that if he clears the 19th floor perfectly. The next stop, the 19th floor, is a desert filled with poisonous rats feasting on bones that look like they've been there for quite some time. You could tell these rats were starving. The 19th floor is called the Den of Rats, which is quite misleading and we'll find out why. He begins fighting the rats and cutting them up, but at that rate, it would be futile as there were so many of them. Next, he resorts to using Divine Flame to burn them up all at once. Still, due to their numbers, it proved futile to take them all out. Soohyun kept using Divine Flame but realizes the mana sipping away. He looks for a way to take them all out and sees a hole in the ground. He immediately gets the brilliant idea to cave in the earth and send them crashing into the ground. He musters all the destructive power he could use and sends them all plummeting to their death, all but one. He's now in an underground labyrinth which turned out to be the real trial site. Now the misleading name is all clear. The last surviving rat was more scared than hungry though, as a hired predator lurks those halls. The rat tried to run away but got killed by a trap that simultaneously alerts the habitant, a double cape, giant-sized serpent. Soohyun defends himself against the snake and tries to fight it off. He tries hardened sword strikes, but the snake has a high physical resistance. Next are the famed Divine Flames. As strong as this ability is, it had little effect on the snake. After dodging multiple attacks from the snake and almost being swallowed, he uses mana and his skill, and Divine Flames to jump and make a slit in the snake's underbelly. If hard skin wasn't enough and high magical resistance, the snake could speedily regenerate. It regenerates and instantly attacks to avenge its pain. He cleverly creates a rope which he uses to restrict the snake's movement by binding it. Realizing he has been wasting mana with all the Divine Flame strikes, he decides to try something different, something that works. He summons the Phoenix, the holy bird and one of the Divine Flame summons. Not too long ago, on the 18th floor, it's a skill obtained because the Divine Flame skill had leveled up. It's not like any other summon as it also allows the user to give orders to the beast and control it, but it consumes a huge amount of its user's mana and is worth it as its destructive power is 10 times that of Divine Flames. He summons the Phoenix and uses it to burn a large hole through the snake's body, ending its life and clearing the floor. He then realizes the next floor was the anticipated 20th floor, and he steals his mind to get ready for it as it would determine if he could face off against the monsters of the outbreak. Soohyun once again leaves the other Awakeners shocked as he once again ranked the top on the 19th floor, making it the 9th floor he had consecutively ranked top of in half a year. What leaves them guessing if he was real is that he ignores Awakeners Association meetings and only a few know his identity. Back to everyday society, he meets up with Juho to discuss how well the favors are going. He got to the meeting point in this flashy car Juho got him, but he didn't need the attention that came with it. After Juho went on and on about the car, they finally discuss. Soohyun first thanks Juho for the house and store Juho got for him and his mother. Juho asked where he lives before and he said Anan, which turns out to be close to Anyang City, where the outbreak is happening in 2 months, as the next month will make it 2 months before the outbreak. Juho also applied for aid on his word from the government as they will need all the help they could get on that day. About the Dump Guild, Juho tried his best to find out what recent evil activities they have had their hands in, but the guild is also really good at covering their tracks and keeping their identity secret. But he was able to get his hand on something. An Awakener was found dead in the middle of the street. When the autopsy came in, it was found that the death resulted from poison. This sent shivers down Soohyun's spine as he also suspected a certain man he had met earlier. He resigned to keeping Juho out of it for his safety and pursued the tale alone. He heads over to Daeho's workshop to pick up Balmung as he was told that it was crafted perfectly. On getting to Daeho's workshop, he's reunited with Balmung as he felt the sword is alive and the perfect sword he needed to be ready for the 20th floor and the outbreak. Daeho, thrilled from having made the sword, excitedly asked Soohyun to name the sword. Not wanting to name it Balmung and give out the fact that it was a sword meant to slay dragons, he names it Graham. Daeho Ajashi thinks it's a corny name, but Soohyun named it so because it was another name for Balmung in northern European countries. As he was about to leave, Daeho offered him tea, but he politely refuses and promises he will next time, as he had somewhere to be as soon as possible. We get introduced to Commander Maxman, a celebrated hero who is in charge of the guarded castle. He asks a guard how the preparations are going, and the guard briefs him on the situation of things. Soon he is confronted by a creepy-looking retainer who is to supervise the whole castle by order of the king. Sir Attaché, the retainer, is supposed to return and assist the king, but he stays back to supervise. He approaches Commander Maxman and asks how the state of the castle is. Commander Maxman complains about the difficulty in the provision and transport of food for the soldiers, and says they would likely have to give up the castle. This statement, the retainer does not take lightly. He tells Commander Maxman to not think about giving up the castle, and that the soldiers should hold the castle for the next month, even though they have been holding it for a month. He asks them to hold the castle even if it costs them their lives. He sarcastically says a celebrated hero like Maxman can do something as simple as that. About to retort, they both hear a large sound, and soon enough, Maxman's attention is called for by one of the guards, as the castle's doors have been breached by Soohyun. Let's dial back to a few hours ago. Soohyun enters the abyss and challenges the 20th floor with so much anxiety. He meets a gatekeeper who is meant to give tips on clearing the floor for the right price. The gatekeeper right off the bat feels he couldn't afford tips from him and asks how much he's going to pay. Soohyun offers 100,000 points, and the gatekeeper thought it was a joke till he got paid. The gatekeeper then told him the tips for the floor. Firstly, he is to try not to kill anyone if possible, and secondly, he has to do what he has to do. He sinks into an area through a hole in the sky. He sees a castle in front of him and the instructions for the trials pop up. The castle, steel-walled and heavily guarded, belongs to the kingdom of Grandaloom, and his trial was to collapse the castle and at the same time remember that they are not entirely enemies. He is also able to recruit allies if need be. His objective is to find the castle secret and stay alive. He takes his time to gather all that he knows and has been told to plan or come up with a strategy to collapse the castle, but first to get in. After much thought and consideration, he decides to go to the front door. He walks up to the castle's gates and is stopped by the guards. They ask him to identify himself and he goes with his famous, "I'm a traveler, just passing by." Given the state the castle is in, they can't let him through with just that. He chooses the other option, going in through force. He apologizes to the guards and jumps above the gate, and coating Graham in divine flames, he cuts down the gates into halves. He destroys the gates and gains entry into the castle along with the attention of all her residents.